Her name is Brooke Greenberg. She looks like a little child, but she's really 17 years old. This child doesn't grow old. She's a unique case in the world. Brooke is 76 centimeters tall, weighs 7 kilograms, and her mental age is about 12 months. But for Melanie, her mother, her baby has become a teenager.
I don't see her as a baby. I see Brooke as 17. She loves to be by herself. She loves to swing by herself. She loves to be in a room by herself. She lets you know when she's not happy. She lets you know when she is happy. They're pretty basic, but you can understand what she's trying to get across to you.
A growth hormone treatment has been tried, but it didn't do anything. Unable to make a diagnostic, doctors have named Brooke's condition Syndrome X.
I feel that Brooke holds some sort of secret, especially in immortality. And we've teamed up with some scientists that are trying to get that secret and figure out what's going on with Brooke.
Is aging a part of life, or is it a disease that we could cure one day? What is Brooke Greenberg's secret, the child who doesn't grow old? Is our lifespan directed by an invisible orchestra conductor? What are the mechanisms? Hormones, telomeres, nanorobots, are these new leads taking us to a longer, healthier life? Could science give us immortality one day? And if it is the case, is this good news? From the dawn of time, man has chased after this obsessing dream to make his life last longer. But throughout history, eternal youth seemed to be associated more with magic spells. It's the ancient myth of the fountain of youth. Sometimes the imagination of a few has linked miracle recipes to mysterious valleys where inhabitants seemed not to be touched by time. Far from legends, here is a place that is real. It's Sardinia. Centenarians live here and are certified, in a population of 1,650,000 inhabitants. In the north of the island, if you search a little, you'll find this olive tree, which has a reputation of being 3,000 years old. The people who live on the island see it as the symbol of their good fortune. But what are the real causes behind the Sardinia's incredible longevity? To find out, we followed the moving laboratory of Professor Luca Daiana. This researcher from the University of Sassari has organized and supervised for years a constant medical watch on the patriarchs of the island and on those who are about to turn 100, like Antonio Manunta, 96 years old, who drove his car to come and see us. The consultation starts by a blood test and continues with a long questionnaire. But if you ask Antonio the secret behind his longevity, his answer is surprisingly simple.
No vices, I don't smoke, and I don't drink.
Not even a little wine?
No, just a glass from time to time, that's all.
There are a lot of reasons behind the longevity of the Sardinian centenarians. First of all, it seems that longevity is hereditary. Sardinian civilization has remained isolated for several centuries. The people have transmitted protective genes from generation to generation. This is Mariana Ferreri, 101 years old. Proudly displayed behind her, there are photos of her parents and grandparents. All of them have reached very old ages.
There is a centenarian among Mrs. Ferreri's direct ancestors, and she has a centenarian cousin living in Torino. Her husband died at 94. Her longevity, combined with her husband's, can be transmitted to their descendants, to their children, or to their nieces and nephews.
Professor Diana revealed to us that by studying the blood of the Sardinian centenarians, he recently discovered proteins which have a vital role in longevity.
We can't publish our discovery yet. It wouldn't be serious because the confirmation procedures are not done yet. If we did, merchants would be selling longevity proteins all over the world tomorrow.
Longevity is not only inherited, lifestyle plays a very important role. A diet based on Mediterranean products explains part of the Sardinians' longevity. Magdalena Sata has just celebrated her 100th birthday. This woman, who is still strong, has had the same diet for her entire life, just like her parents and her grandparents.
This red wine, Sardinian wine, every centenarian drinks one glass during a meal. This wine contains 60 to 70% of polyphenol, which is a substance found in plants which protects cells.
I eat everything, what I make myself, and what we buy at the market. I eat all sorts of dishes: saraga, ravioli, alessandarsins, lasagna that I prepare myself, scappellita, spaghetti with mussels, spaghetti with seafood. I eat everything.
We are told that Sardinians hate stress. To get rid of it, the best remedy they found is that centuries-old institution, family. When she was 100, Raimonda Corda still made beautiful embroideries. Since then, her hands have failed her, but her protective entourage has not.
The family plays a vital role in the centenarian's longevity because it has a psychological effect. It provides encouragement, security, and assistance. It allows them to stay themselves as they reach the age of 100 years old.
104.
Yes, yes. To reach the age of 104 years old. You're right.
I can't walk like I used to anymore.
Yes, you can't walk anymore, but you're doing very well. The role of the family is very important to help the person to become a centenarian.
There is the family, of course, but there is something else. There's a psychological trait that centenarians have that has been observed closely by Dr. Christophe de Gégère, a renowned specialist on the biology of longevity.
Centenarians have a characteristic that is rarely looked at, which is their psychological profile. They are far from being sweet and kind as they are often portrayed. People often say that they are wise and friendly, that they're going to take care of their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. In reality, what comes out of all the studies on centenarians is their very rigid behavior. They don't leave anything up to chance. They don't necessarily go towards others. They push stress away. They push it towards others, but their life is perfectly organized. They get up at 7:30 their whole lives. They eat at 7:58, always the same way. They go to pick up their mail at 9:22, not at 9:24, at 9:22. They don't have space for spontaneity in their lives, which is sometimes very difficult for the people around them.
I'm going to recite the death song.
The death song.
Oh, death, why won't you come and take me? You see that I'm still down here, at home, on earth.
There is another aspect that has to be taken into consideration, which is death. In general, Sardinians are convinced that they are going to live for a long time, that they are never going to die. They don't think about death, and they go forward by removing the obstacles in front of them.
It's perhaps by forgetting that death exists that a Sardinian olive tree managed to live 3,000 years. But longevity is not that simple. There is what we are and what we do with what we are. The genetic heritage and the lifestyle. Sardinians got lucky because they have both. Let's go back to little Brooke Greenberg. Here she is, photographed with her sisters. And this is how the years have gone by. It's very likely that the future will look like the past.
I think the first 5 years of her life, all we did was prepare Brooke to die. I mean, the doctor said she wasn't going to make it. She went through all these procedures and everything, and every outcome was that she wasn't going to make it. In the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years, we've been told that she could live a very long time. As long as her medical condition stays the same, her environment stays the same, they're saying that she could live well over 100.
Until now, we thought we were going to lose her, but today we think she's going to live a very long life. So, what happened to Brooke? What strange accident has she been the victim of? Dr. Richard Walker, the respected hormonologist, is close to the Greenbergs and has followed the little girl's case for years. Now that he's retired in St. Petersburg, Florida, he's been using his free time to gather up all his analysis into a theory about the general causes behind aging.
Well, I saw Brooke on TV in 2005. She was on a Dateline presentation, and I was immediately taken by the fact that this child may have a condition that could bring science new information about the aging process. And so I contacted the parents, Mr. and Mrs. Greenberg, and after discussing my interest in their daughter, and that I really wasn't going to offer any kind of cure for her condition, but that she might bring some information to science that would tell us about why we age and why we're mortal.
Dr. Walker is certain that a vital mechanism has stopped or is malfunctioning in Brooke, a mechanism that we will now try to shed some light on.
Brooke Greenberg's condition is probably the result of a spontaneous mutation, a genetic mutation, that caused her to develop very slowly and also to be disorganized in her development. This is not unlike other genetic mutations that cause changes in the rate of aging, such as progeria or Werner's syndrome. In those cases, they develop faster and they undergo aging faster. In Brooke's case, the genetic effect that she has causes her to develop much slowly.
Genetic malfunctions make us remember the rule. Every living species is generally programmed for a very precise lifespan. This is the case from the smallest midge to the elephant, and to human beings, of course. Let's start with ants. Depending on the species, their lifespan can go from a few weeks to a year. But some live up to 30 years. Let's continue with a little game. What is the maximum lifespan of a parrot? 40 years? 75 years? Or 120 years? Think about it. The answer, 120 years. Now, what about an elephant? 70 years? 90 years? Or 110 years? The answer, 70 years. Finally, what about a seagull? 1 year, 5 years, or 15 years? The answer, 15 years. Other species, such as turtles, have a biology that allows them to live longer. Let's listen to Marie-Claude Bomcel, professor at the Museum of Natural History in Paris, France.
Turtles are poikilotherm, or cold-blooded, meaning that their temperature changes according to their surroundings. They use solar energy. In fact, they're solar batteries. They invented sustainable energy well before us. They have another advantage: they're herbivores, so their digestion is easy and their excretion process is slow but normal. They're big, so they have maximum energy accumulation, and the cost of their reproduction is very low because they lay their eggs and leave. This means a very long life because they have to handle their weight and therefore move and live very slowly. It's the case for them; they can live up to 150 years, which is huge. A snake lives 40 years, 50 years at most, because they eat meat, which is a lot more difficult to digest and shortens the lifespan.
Old age is a lot more prominent for mammals.
These are mammals, homeothermal animals. They have to maintain a temperature at 38 degrees Celsius. To maintain a temperature at 38 degrees, you need food to keep it up. As you can see, they're quite round. Ninette is 40, Tubo is 16. As a female, Ninette has a very high cost of reproduction. She has to give birth and feed her baby, and that takes a very, very long time. So the machine gets tired a lot quicker. These animals will live up to 40, 45 years. It's not very long. It's similar to humans. Except my Tubo, in my opinion. How about it, my Tubo? We'll live an eternal love. You're going to live with me for 100 years. What indifference.
One of the most astonishing cases is the Pacific salmon, which dies after laying its eggs once. Their instinct pushes them to swim upstream to reproduce at the same spot where they were born. It's a very tiring journey that salmons do without eating anything. Once they arrived, the female lays her eggs and the male fertilizes them. From then on, they're doomed. In a few days, hormonal shocks turn them into old and fragile creatures. Life is telling them that it's time for them to disappear, which is what they do in unison, thousands of them. From their birth, their future is programmed. In 2 or 3 years, they will come to die here, in the place where they were born, right after their only reproduction. But why? Why did nature give living creatures so many different lifespans? By fantasy? On a whim? By chance? Or is there a hidden reason behind this diversity?
If you look for a logic behind longevity, you won't find one. Because according to nature, you have to live, survive, and more importantly, reproduce so that the species continues. In itself, the individual doesn't matter.
In other words, nature is thrifty. It gives living species only the time they need to reproduce. But man comes and changes the rules.
Il n'y a guère que l'homme qui cherche à échapper à son destin.
Only man tries to escape his fate. He reproduces himself, he has children, so from then on, normally, no need to talk about retirement. He should disappear because he becomes another mouth to feed. From the point of view of the species, of course. But no, man wants to stay. He wants to take advantage of it. He wants to take advantage of his earned retirement. He wants to change his fate. This is how he questions the evolution of the species completely. And we might get a few surprises because of that.
Man wants to change his fate by trying to understand how this biological machine works. At first, it's marvelous. This living machine is perfectly organized and perfectly healed by an invisible but very effective maintenance service. A maintenance service as precise as the maintenance of an airplane should be. But little by little, this service relaxes and causes aging. Why does the machine malfunction after a few decades? Look at little Brooke. Is it fair to say that this child hasn't grown older?
Oh, absolutely not. She's aging, even though she's aging quite slowly. But if you look more importantly at the parts of her body, you'd see that she's developing at different rates. For example, if we were to look at her brain, you'd see that you had a brain of what would appear to be a child less than a year old. On the other hand, her dentition, her teeth, show the picture of a child about 6 or 7 years old. Similarly, we look at her skeletal system, her bones. These are developing at the rate of a 10-year-old. And paradoxically, we look at her cells. The cells age at the same rate or beyond her chronological age. So these are 17-year-old or more.
Like everyone, Brooke is growing older, but in a chaotic and disorganized way. This observation has allowed Dr. Walker to suggest a new way to understand the aging process. He suggested to compare the development of an individual to an orchestra.
Well, there's really basically two parts. We have the organism, which is our bodies, and they are produced by sexual reproduction, which means that we start life as a single cell, a fertilized egg. And we have to undergo from that point a dynamic transformation or change in our bodies to become adults. And that process is not a random one. In fact, it has to be guided. And the way it's guided is by our genes, our regulatory genes that take us from the single cell to the full adult.
He suggested to compare the development of an individual to an orchestra. First, let's see how the roles are assigned.
If we were to compare the organism with the orchestra, then the body itself would be represented by the musicians. The regulatory genes would be represented by the conductor, who actually guides the musicians in their development of the theme until it reaches maturity.
Progressively, under the conductor's directions, the musicians join their talents to develop the beautiful theme written in the score. This is how a human being grows and develops from infancy to sexual maturity.
That perfection, that physical and functional perfection is achieved when we're in our early 20s. And so this transformation is controlled by the regulatory genes that direct this process up to the time that we're young adults, at which point there is no more information.
Here we are at the precise moment where the conductor turns the page of his score and discovers that the next one is blank. The situation is identical for each musician. So what happened? Life, in its blind logic, concentrates on reproduction. Once the organism has reproduced itself, it can disappear. It's as if life forgot to write the rest of the score. That is the genetic information that would allow an organism to last beyond the reproductive age.
So at this point, the conductor continues to drive the orchestra. He keeps giving instruction and moving his baton, yet there's no music to play. So each individual member of the orchestra starts playing by himself. As a result of that, there's a discoordination or developing atonal result, and the music deteriorates, similarly to what happens in the body.
We are now getting into Dr. Walker's central hypothesis. After our sexual maturity, which is between 18 and 20, our organism, much like this orchestra gone mad, no longer has the sequence of genetic instruction, which would allow it to live without malfunctioning.
There is a missing sequence. Once we reach maturity, around 18 or 20, our mechanism becomes disturbed. This score that was once perfectly written, which ended with something positive, with an adult in full possession of his senses, becomes disturbed. At that point, there is an accumulation of errors, which are globally going to be harmful and are going to create aging. And this aging will set the path for disease and will make us disappear with a period of disablement that will vary in length. And this is what most people fear. Most people aren't afraid of death. They are afraid of that period of disablement before death.
From that point, we have a better understanding of what happened to Brooke. The orchestra conductor inside her was deficient from the beginning.
Well, if we looked at Brooke in comparison to the orchestra, it would be as if Brooke had within her a bad conductor, because if the conductor got up in front of the orchestra and started directing the musicians, but not in a very good way, they wouldn't bring together a good final theme. Brooke has this type of defect in her regulatory genes, so that she's not developing normally. However, the value of that in Brooke to science is that from her defect, her bad conductor, we can find ultimately the good conductor that will allow us to sustain healthy life beyond maturity.
Finally, the extraordinary case of little Brooke is teaching us that if tomorrow we manage to find the right genetic sequence, which is in charge of the rest of the score, meaning our longevity, we will finally have the solution.
This means that tomorrow, at 15, 20, 25 years old, we will be able to modify and to correct our various healing systems in order to allow a man to constantly restore his capacities. Starting at the age of 18, 20, we will fix ourselves, and we're capable of doing it. At 18 years old, our system's functions are operational. It's after that they deteriorate. So if these systems remain operational, our lifespan, which we now set at a statistic of 120 maximum, could reach up to 150, 200, and much more.
Of course, no one knows when biology will be able to do this. But until then, what do we do? One thing is sure, we won't just stand there. This is what people acted upon very early on here in the colorful world of Venice Beach in California. The famous anti-age movement started here in Venice in the 60s, carried out by the baby boomer generation.
They saw their parents, or they see their parents, growing old and growing old badly, trying to find a retirement home, being worried by incontinence, etc. That's not what they want. They are now reaching retirement. They want to take advantage of it in good shape. This is the typical American spirit. It's not a spirit of being taken care of, but a fighting spirit. I want to be part of it, and I'll fight for it. So how are they going to do this? They are going to work on what has become unbalanced in their organism.
Since we were in California, we went to Palm Springs. Settled in the middle of the desert, 170 kilometers from Los Angeles, Palm Springs is known for its golf courses. It's also the vacation place for rich Californian retirees and a few Hollywood stars. It's here that Dr. Chain founded his institute. Criticized by some and praised by others, Dr. Chain is a pioneer in the anti-age movement. He was the first 15 years ago to suggest on a large scale a therapy based on hormonal balance. On his website, Dr. Chain reveals his formula to make us live and grow old like seagulls.
The process of aging in humans are very different from the aging process of the seagulls. In human beings, we age because our hormones drop. And as they drop, we become ill and we die. In seagulls, their hormones are always, throughout their lifespan, very high, very optimum, and therefore they live a full lifespan without any diseases, and at the end, they drop in the ocean and die. The basis of my treatment is pretty simple, to imitate the seagulls. And that is to maintain our hormones at optimum levels throughout our lifespan.
To have a better understanding of what happens at the center of the living, let's use the example of a car. Look, the dashboard shows the levels of the fluids that are necessary for the engine to work: water, oil, gas. This is the dashboard for man, the hormonal secretions that are essential for life. For example, thyroid hormones, which control the heat production in our body. Melatonin, which helps us find beauty sleep. The growth hormone, which increases the mass and the tone of our muscles. DHEA, which is secreted by our adrenal gland and has an effect on our libido, on our skin, and on our bones. Just like the fluids in a car, our hormone level drops as we get old. This is how your level of thyroid hormones decreases between 10 and 90 years old. Unfortunately, it isn't better for the DHEA. It's the same drop for melatonin. And of course, it's the same thing for the growth hormone.
Hormones are actually like emails and letters. They are communications that send by organs to the DNA. When the hormones become less, the signal become less. And when the signals become less, the DNA don't get the message. And when DNA doesn't get the message, DNA doesn't reproduce the next generation of daughters in a healthy way. The DNA produces daughters in ugly cells, disease cells.
For Dr. Chain, this drop in hormonal secretions explains why it becomes necessary with age to re-establish broken balances. To bring our car to the mechanic, his website is full of exemplary cases. In the before and after presentation. Before, they had the same age as their hormones. So they felt tired and old, very old.
Before I came to Dr. Chen 11 years ago, I think I was growing old. My tennis game was not very good. My mind was not, was kind of on the slow side.
I was reaching a point where at times I was actually feeling a little fatigued in the middle of the day, feeling like maybe I wanted to take a nap.
Then Dr. Chen steps in with a wonderful trick. Deceive our DNA, thanks to the hormonal supplements in these little boxes.
If I restore your hormone levels to a youthful level, 20-year-old, for example, and you're 60, I restore you to a 20-year-old level. What happens is your DNA is going to get a message that you are now 20. So when it reproduces and in the cell, it will be a 20-year-old cell. It will be a young cell, a youthful cell, a healthy cell, rather than reproduces in a 60-year-old cell.
The result is explosive. Their life seems to be transformed, as if they were 20 again.
You feel like you did 10, 20 years ago. That's what's amazing about it. You have the energy level. You like to get involved in sports and things like that the way you did some time ago.
My mental aggressiveness and my physical prowess, I believe, have both changed since I've been going to the Institute. I think right now that my mental capacity is stronger than when I was in my 30s.
Of course, it's a caricature like an oversimplified commercial, yet the results are there. Millions of men and women in the world have tried this hormonal balance experiment and exclaim its benefits. But as important as they are, hormones are only one stone in a complex building.
Dr. Chen is a typical example of the view that everything is about hormones. It's perfect because it answers to the demand of a lot of patients. It's a simple solution. There's a problem, there's a solution. We make an injection, it's over, everything starts again. In reality, nature and human physiology are a lot more complicated than that. This causes very few people to access this kind of longevity, medical treatment, because it implies that you have to change your lifestyle. It implies that you have to eat differently, exercise, take hormones or physiological correctors. It implies a whole set of things. It's reaction of people looking for a magical solution, just like kings or rich people used to do back in the Middle Ages, or in other times in the distant past, when they ate animal testicles, bull testicles, to find youth again. It's just not that simple.
And I now ask you to step forward to receive your Nobel Prizes from the hands of His Majesty the King.
Now let's reach a new level, beyond hormones. A new lead has been followed by researchers for the past 20 years, telomerase. In 2009, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was won by these three researchers, Elizabeth Blackburn, Carol Greider, and Jack Szostak, for the discovery of how chromosomes are protected by telomerase. What is it about? The extremities of our chromosomes are like the plastic protection of a shoelace, which stops the end of the shoelace from fraying. Unfortunately, each time one of our cells splits itself, the length of our telomerase diminishes. Each split acts like a razor blade, and one day it's over. Without its protection, our chromosomes' shoelace deteriorates, and our cells become damaged at each split. This leads to old age and death. Is the story over? Well, no. The rest happens in Seattle's airport's very noisy food court. Everything is in this enzyme here, which is naturally produced by the organism. Its name? Telomerase. In front of the screen, this is the biologist Michael Fossell, which we met between two planes. He's one of the researchers that works on this miracle enzyme.
Telomerase is an enzyme, very short protein, and in your cells what it does is it protects the telomeres and it controls the rate of cell repair and regeneration. We use it to reset aging within cells.
Normally, telomerase is only active in sexual cells and cancerous cells. By protecting their telomerase, they can reproduce themselves indefinitely. Now let's imagine that a switch is installed in your body, in each cell, capable of activating or, on the contrary, inhibiting the production of telomerase.
Telomerase is very important in cells. It controls both cancer and aging. So we want to be able to turn it off so we can prevent aging and we can cure age-related diseases. We also want to be able to turn it off in cancer cells so we can stop cancer, we can cure cancer. Not enough to be able to turn it just off or just on. We want to be able to control turning it on and off so we can cure whatever we need to.
Of course, the idea is great, but how can it be done? There are several leads, but today researchers are placing their hopes in this little plant.
There is a plant that's been known in Chinese herbal medicine for 3,000 years. And it turns out that one of the factors in this plant is active as a telomerase activator. So what we'd like to do is try using this clinically, try using it in patients to see if it makes an effect on aging. I think you can expect not only a longer life, but a much healthier life. And when I say longer life, could this be 10 years, 20 years? No, probably more. We're probably looking at 100 years, 200 years of healthier lifespan. Not just longer lifespan. Nobody wants longer lifespan in the nursing home and the hospital. But a healthy lifespan, where you're out playing tennis, seeing your great-great-great-great-grandchildren, where you're healthy. The health of a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old. And again, I think we'll begin to see this in the next 10 years.
Further into the future, there's another frontier, very great longevity, several centuries of life. In Denver, Colorado, we met Dr. Terry Grossman. In his latest best-selling book, he dares to ask the question, will we live forever? His method is prevention and high technology. He's already taken precautions in case he has a heart attack tomorrow.
So if tomorrow I must have a heart attack, I am very sorry to learn that. I will at least hope that I will be in a place where there are doctors that know how to use stem cells available to me. Because I was fortunate enough to have saved my stem cells a number of years ago, so I have some youthful stem cells available. And what the doctors are doing today in the case of a heart attack is they take stem cells usually from the patient's belly, they take the belly fat, they isolate the stem cells, and then they inject those stem cells directly into the heart of the patient, and it stops the damage from occurring.
All of this is for the very near future. But what about tomorrow and after? Two revolutions await medicine. The first is nanomedicine.
Nanomedicine refers to medicine done on the scale of a nanometer. Nanometer is about the size of atoms. So we will have medicine that is on the size of atoms. And the type of nanomedicine that is even available today, the scientists have developed very tiny balls. And they use these balls to fill with medicine. And these can be injected into the bloodstream, and they will circulate to an area. Say, for instance, we want to kill a cancer cell. So over the next 10 years, this is the type of nanomedicine that will be available to us.
The second and the more conclusive revolution will be nanorobots. Then great longevity will be in our sight.
Nanorobots or nanobots are small devices that will be made. We can't make them today because we do not have the technology to do that, but they will be injected into the body and circulate through the bloodstream and repair damage and fix things that we need to do. So these are little tiny submarines of the future. We anticipate they'll be available maybe around 2030, between 2030 and 2040. So we will look at life expectancies that are measured in centuries rather than decades.
However, let's be careful. It won't just be a matter of medicine or technology. During the era of nanorobots, the very foundations of our society will be modified.
I think that the easiest part of this problem is going to be the engineering, developing these nanobots and developing this technology. The hardest part is for us as human beings to adopt this technology into our lives, because it's going to change virtually every aspect of life as we know it into the future.
For example, in the debate about retirement in France, we're talking about a few years. But imagine that tomorrow we're going to talk about a lifespan extension of 50, 100 years. What will happen? Who will be able to benefit from it? That is also a problem. If there is 100 people, it's okay. But if there's 10,000, 100,000, what does it represent? What will it mean to people who can't benefit from it or won't benefit from it? Finally, imagine the North-South divide. It's not possible to think that we, as Westerners, can benefit of a life that extends to 150, 200 years in good health, not bedridden in an old people's home, but active, wanting to work and create, while, on the other hand, on the African continent, for example, 50% of the total population is under 15 years old in certain regions. What will happen?
Let's continue our trip around the world. We're in Varanasi in India, the holy city on the banks of the Ganges. Varanasi, the city of the dead. We're in the heart of beliefs and myths. These men and women are convinced that if they come to die in Varanasi, they will have the possibility of breaking the reincarnation cycle and reach nirvana. When evening comes, the dead are covered in flowers and brought to the Ganges to be purified. Then they're placed on a pyre. The fire is brought from the temple of Shiva by the eldest man in the family. Nobody cries. In Varanasi, to succeed in life is to succeed in death. More importantly, you finally leave the cycle of life.
When the body is coming for funeral, funeral is actually a redistribution system. Let all energies go back to its original form. Once again, it will reform a body. Soul is a smaller part of the Absolute. It can get a reunion with Absolute, but you cannot destroy it. You cannot chop it down, you cannot just reduce into ashes. It will remain.
Now that we're at the border of the great longevity revolution, we need to reach a new understanding of life. If we want to live fully until 150, 200 years, and maybe much more. According to Jean-Claude Amaisen, biologist and member of the Ethics Committee, the extension of life will only be a progress when it leads us to reconsider all of our values.
We've been talking a lot about sustainable development, and the question is, do we want to sustain the current tragedies for a part of humanity? Or do we want to make sure that the development is fair? That humanity lives in a situation that is fair, and then sustain it? I think it's the same thing for the growth and lifespan we're hoping for. Let's try to be as humane as possible with each person, with each child who lives on Earth today, and if we manage to do that, then let's try to make this good life last as long as possible.
Here's Brooke once again and for the last time. Will her handicap help us to lift part of the veil and to progress in understanding the most hidden secrets of life and evolution? Maybe. But how can one not be overcome with emotion in front of these large eyes, lost and staring into space? They show sadness, but also a huge hope for humanity. Stephen Wilshire is not an ordinary young man. He's a human camera. Take a look. A few hours before, he flew for a few minutes over the center of London for the first time in his life. Then Stephen was brought to this large drawing board. This is where the incredible begins. Without hesitating and without doing any sketches beforehand, he drew the buildings with their exact proportions. Everything is there. And he detailed the streets as he photographed them. Where does he get his strange talent? They are prodigies in drawing, music, or calculus. They are autistic people who have savant syndrome. He has been named the Little Mozart of jazz. How did little Matt Savage discover piano in one night? Trance, ecstasy, meditation? Do altered states of consciousness reveal an unknown part of ourselves? Can the brain of a believer be scientifically studied? Does faith leave a trace in the brain? Now that science has new machines to explore the human mind, can it unveil the hidden side of the brain? What do we know about the human brain? Approximately what we know about the tip of an iceberg. And the iceberg brain is really huge. 100 billion brain cells and 500 billion possible connections between them. There are as many stars in the whole universe. In the history of brain exploration, unusual behaviors have often allowed knowledge to progress. Today, that's the case of people who have savant syndrome. This is 2003 in Quebec. Julien is 9 years old, and he has pervasive development disorder. In his case, it's autism. At the request of his parents, we've hidden his face. To test his extraordinary evaluating capacities, the Canadian research team are going to put him through a series of tests. First exercise. Julien has to estimate the circumference of this circle.
Wow. See the circle all around us?
All of this is 25 meters.
25.
The experience is all the more difficult because it's timed.
20 meters.
20 meters. The white pipe that goes from here all the way until there, how long is it?
10 meters.
10 meters.
The result goes beyond all expectations. Julian's answers are 90% correct. For the second exercise, we set the camera behind a two-way mirror to avoid distracting Julian.
I'm going to give them to you one by one. You can hold them like that.
This time, he has to estimate the weight of each cup.
200 grams.
Once again, his answers are very close to their real weight.
$1 kilo.
The last experiment is even more impressive. Let's precise that nothing is rigged or prepared. Julian is seeing this computer for the first time.
10.
The point of the exercise is to say how many dots there are on the screen.
35.
Julian has only 2 seconds to see the screen.
130. 145. 230. We don't know exactly how people with pervasive developmental disorder know how to estimate with such precision. Julian is capable of having an exceptional performance, meaning far superior to a normal person, when he counts the number of dots on a screen. And yet, he doesn't practice to do this task every day. He has this capacity, which is probably linked to his pervasive developmental disorder, without having to practice.
Don't be fooled by these little feats. Autism is a dysfunction first and foremost, but also an opportunity for Julian and others like him to develop exceptional faculties. Nevertheless, these surprising faculties must have an explanation. Our investigation continues in the United States in Massachusetts. Meet Matt Savage. Matt was diagnosed with autism when he was very young. Today, he's considered a piano genius. Dave Brubeck himself nicknamed Matt the Little Mozart of jazz. He's played with stars such as Chick Corea, Wynton Marsalis, and Chaka Khan. He composed 9 albums, the first 7 albums between the age of 7 and 14. He's played on many stages, including the famous Blue Note in New York. Question: how does music come to you?
Well, I can't really say for sure. I mean, I don't really have a particular method. You could say it just goes right from the head or from the heart to the fingers. Usually what happens is I think of this one simple idea. This melody just comes out of nowhere, and then I build on it. Because it's not really all that hard to build a tune from melody. So like, say if I play, and then I could do like, and then I could create some sort of tune from that.
Matt discovered his talent one night in unusual circumstances. Before that, he was considered to be a problem child. We asked Matt to describe himself when he was 3 or 4. He decided to answer us with music, whereas his mother used words.
When Matt was younger, he was very, very difficult to handle. He was sensitive to sound, and he was sensitive to light, and he was overwhelmed by most things in life. And so he had a lot of tantrums, and he would, it was just very difficult for him to cope with anything. He was diagnosed with pervasive developmental disorder, which is a form of autism. And we didn't know about it at the time because we didn't know anyone who had a child with autism. But he was showing all of the signs of a child with autism.
One night when he was 6 years old, something astonishing happened. In a few hours, Matt discovered the piano. Question: what happened that night?
When Matt was 6.5 years old, he did a therapy to help his ears to normalize sound, and we had given him some musical toys so that he could try to get used to sounds. And we just heard the music coming from downstairs, and it was the first time we heard music from him. He came upstairs to show us his music, and then I took him over to the real piano, and I gave him some beginning music, and he taught himself how to play. He learned how to read the music and actually played the piano. Explain that. I can't explain.
Astounding. After having worked on Schubert at the age of 7, Matt met with jazz. His improvisational talent explodes, and Matt performs on several stages. Publishes 7 records in a few years. His case is so exceptional that Dr. Daryl Treffert, a world-renowned specialist in savant syndrome, suggested a new concept, the prodigious savant.
A prodigious savant is a person whose skills are so spectacular and so remarkable that if they were not disabled, we would call them a genius. It's a very high threshold level. And there probably are fewer than 100 such persons living worldwide at the present time, and Matt fits into that very elite group.
I think there is a link between his autism and his talent in that I think that the focus that he has, his ability to hyper-focus on things, allowed him to hyper-focus on music.
Today, Matt is continuing his studies in Boston, and he spends his weekends at his family's biofarm.
It's got the build of a heifer, kind of.
Now that Matt's older, most of the signs of his autism are gone. And he's just like every other teenager, except more polite and sweeter, I think.
Apart from music, Matt has a few talents that are appropriate for savant syndrome, like exceptional calculating faculties or the ability to act like a living calendar. For example, February 8, 1947 was a Saturday. The question is put to him.
February 8th, 1947. 2/8/47. I think it was a Saturday.
You win!
These abilities can be found in his way of playing and of composing. He never plays the same version twice and starts his concerts without setting a program in advance. His faculties are so exceptional that Daryl Treffert made hypotheses that are mind-boggling.
Well, Matt, like other prodigious savants, seems to have access to a huge store of information and talent and ability that we don't have access to. And for whatever reason, he's able to go, his teacher says about him that he knows things beyond his own existence, which means that he is able to access this huge store of information and data that the rest of us cannot.
The human brain isn't static. It has a 7-million-year-old history. From Lucy, the little Australopithecus, to modern man, the volume of the brain has been multiplied by 2. So, could savant syndrome show us that this transformation is going to continue? It's possible. The answer may be given one day by the modern techniques of neuroimaging.
2, 0, 9, 12, 0,
6,272.
Very few experiments have been done on the brains of young mental calculation prodigies while they were in action.
6,272.
A team of French and Belgian neurologists studied the abilities of this young 29-year-old German mental calculator, Rüdiger Gamm.
377,149,515,625.
Rüdiger Gamm isn't autistic, but he has savant syndrome, which has given him the opportunity to show his extraordinary capacities in calculus on television. To try to understand Rüdiger's method, researchers have used a very efficient technique of neuroimaging: positron emission tomography.
4,648.
Thanks to radioactive markers, we can visualize the cerebral zones that are activated when Rüdiger does complicated calculations mentally.
1,944.
Now let's do the same experiment with this young guinea pig who isn't a whiz at math like Rüdiger. So, where's the difference? The analysis of the results shows that Rüdiger uses an additional memory space, his long-term memory. On the contrary, when we do a calculation, we store the intermediate results of our calculations in a small memory space used for work, called our short-term memory. Thus, Rüdiger benefits from a bigger mental pocket that has greater storage capacities, which benefits his accomplishments.
170.526.
If you prefer, the mental calculator has the same brain as us anatomically, but he uses it differently. That is the difference, and as you will see, it's essential. There's a snowstorm on the little city of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. This is where Dr. Daryl Treffert lives. This psychiatrist has dedicated 40 years of his life to the savant syndrome. In 1988, he was a consultant for the film Rain Man, inspired by the real case of the famous Kim Peek, the most famous case of savant syndrome. Mr. Peek is now deceased.
Kim Peek was the inspiration for the movie Rain Man, and I was a consultant to the movie, and that's where we first met. Kim is what I call the Mount Everest of memory. He has memorized 12,000 books, word for word. He has a factual memory within 15 areas of expertise that simply history, biography, the Bible, you simply cannot stump him. And one of the most amazing things about him is that he reads so quickly. He reads one page with one eye and he reads the other page with the other eye and immediately goes to his hard disk and it's stored there. I keep saying at some point the image has to come up disk full, but it never does. And he simply has continued to astound me with his memory. I think there's no other person who ever lived or is living, or I think will live, with the factual memory that Kim Peek has had.
Even though he's now retired, Daryl Treffert receives dozens of emails daily from worried parents everywhere in the world.
I get emails from all over the world, China, South Africa, Brazil, wherever. Many of them are from parents asking about their child, concerned about their child. I've got a son or daughter who, wondering what to do with the talent that their child has shown. Others come from researchers elsewhere in the world who are looking and sharing cases with me, and I get many of my new cases from other people around the world.
Dr. Treffert has examined hundreds of radiographic snapshots of brains belonging to people with Savant syndrome, and according to him, all of them would have a common characteristic.
The thing that Savant syndrome persons have in common is left brain injury, maybe disease, maybe a traumatic injury or a genetic predisposition, but it is left brain injury.
We're at the heart of the problem. We have to remember that our brain is separated into two specialized hemispheres. To explain this, we called on a famous neuroanatomist, Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor. In a hotel between two flights, Dr. Taylor opened her luggage for us.
The human brain is divided into two hemispheres, and they have two very different functions. And so this is a human brain. And so you're looking now at the external surface of the brain. This is the left hemisphere, this is the right hemisphere. And you can see here that they're divided into two halves. And the two hemispheres process different kinds of information in different ways. So the right hemisphere is all about experiencing the present moment. It's all about right here, right now. In the right here, right now, there are no boundaries. Everything is perceived as energy. And so the atoms and molecules just experience the energy and they blend with one another so that there's the big picture vision. So the right hemisphere thinks in pictures and it's all about the right here, right now. The left hemisphere takes that present moment experience and then breaks it down into details. And part of the details is our language, our ability to speak, our ability to make sound, our ability to place meaning on that sound. And part of that sound is my ability to say, I am. I am an individual. And as soon as I say I am, then I exist separate from all of the energy around me. So the two hemispheres work together in order for us to have a single perception of reality, but we actually have two very different machines processing information in two very different ways.
Now let's remember that Dr. Treffert noticed that people who have Savant syndrome all have a lesion in the left hemisphere of their brain. And he gives us what he considers to be the key of the problem.
Well, I found in the work that I've been doing that the right brain compensates for the left brain injury. It does that through a process of rewiring, recruiting areas that are available, or releasing dormant capacity within the right hemisphere.
According to Dr. Treffert, it's by drawing dormant aptitudes from a reservoir in the right side of the brain that people who have savant syndrome can achieve these prodigies that seem to be way out of our reach. And the most fascinating part is that these aptitudes would exist in all of us. To prove it, Dr. Treffert has examined cases of people who have had the same lesions as people with savant syndrome after an accident. Here's the surprise. They also have awakened uncommon faculties.
Well, probably one of the best examples of acquired savant syndrome was Alonzo Clemens. He had a severe fall as a child, and after that, his tremendous sculpting ability literally exploded on the scene. He's gone on to be a world-famous sculptor now, and that injury allowed him access which he otherwise would not have had. And so there is that huge store of material in all of us. And the question is, how can we access that without having an injury or some kind of central nervous system catastrophe? And that's where our research is leading us these days.
Among these attempts, Daryl Treffert invites us to discover the methodology of the American author Betty Edwards in her book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. Translated worldwide, it's made drawing possible to those who didn't think they could draw. The principle is to disconnect the left side of the brain, which analyzes while you're drawing, and allow students to access and express the potential of the right side of their brain.
Not just drawing skills, but to vision and creativity, which was not there earlier. I think sometimes just spending some time, what I call rummaging around in our right hemisphere, just consciously and deliberately spending some time in those areas of our existence that we ordinarily trivialize or don't pay attention to until we retire maybe and say, well, now I've got the time to do that. But why wait that long? It's like taking a side trip instead of using the freeway or the tollway all of the time, and simply rummaging, what I call rummaging around in the right hemisphere, gives us that sort of access.
Of course, talking about the left side and the right side of the brain is a simplification. Our brain isn't a map, as people used to assume naively in the last century. It's characterized by an astonishing plasticity, which localizes on the right side of the brain functions that are on the left side in other people. Nevertheless, in most cases, the functions of analysis and logical reasoning are on the left, whereas visual and intuitive functions are on the right.
We are a left hemisphere society. We depend on our left hemisphere. It serves us well. Logical, sequential thinking, language, things that have served us well. They serve us so well that we begin to use only that well-worn pathway, sort of to the neglect of the rest of the brain, the right hemisphere. Yeah, some people call that the tyranny of the left hemisphere, because it is so dominant, and it is so well used and so easily used by us that it's to the neglect of the right hemisphere.
If there was an apostle of the right side of the brain today, it would indeed be Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor. What happened to her is incredible. One morning in 1996, she was the victim of a vascular accident, which drowned the left side of her brain in blood.
I had a major vascular problem in this region of my left hemisphere. And it started very small when a blood vessel exploded, and then it got larger and larger. And over time, then as the blood clot got bigger, I had more and more deficit to the point where I could not walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of my life.
Since Dr. Taylor is a neuroanatomist, she describes with an astonishing lucidity her journey that brought her from the lesion in her left hemisphere to progressively discover the potentials of her right hemisphere.
When I lost my left hemisphere and I lost all the details of my life, part of the details is my job and my relationships and my past emotional baggage, all of the things about my life that brought me stress. So when I lost my left hemisphere, all my stress about my existence went away. And in the absence of that, I felt this incredible awe of the beauty of what I was as a living being, and I just shifted into the consciousness of the present moment, which was wonderful. So the change that's happened in me is I moved into a space of loving, open, compassionate way of being in the world, a celebration of life, a gratitude for what I am as a living being. And now I go into the world, and recovery to me meant recovering skills of my left brain so that I could again communicate. I could again interact with others, but I now come from the consciousness of the right hemisphere.
For several years now, Dr. Bolt Taylor has been spreading the good word about the right side of the brain. The side of the brain that she says is programmed for love and being open with one another. We're no longer in the realm of science only, but of an almost spiritual quest based upon the revelation that her accident gave her.
I think that religion does give us access to the right side of our brain. It allows us to transcend ourselves, to look at bigger issues, our existence, meaning, and gets us away from the turmoil of the left hemisphere, the busyness, and the tyranny, what I call the tyranny of the left hemisphere. It takes us to a different place where we can be more relaxed, where we can be more insightful and introspective. And people are searching for that. We're so tied up with what's happening in our left hemisphere and the busyness and the chatter of that. We seek a place of more tranquility and peace. And that is to be found in the right hemisphere and not the left.
The right hemisphere is wired for spirituality. It's the big picture experience of all that is. It is the tool that we use in order to feel boundless, because there are no boundaries there. And in the absence of boundary, we become at one with all that is, and in that space, that is when we would feel our connection to something that is greater than we are. Call that Buddha, call that God, call that Allah, call that whatever you want to do it, but we are wired for it in the consciousness of our right brain.
Let's make a bet here. If, as Dr. Trevor claims, Western civilization has been founded on a wildly rational and analytical vision of the world, typical of the left side of the brain, then it could be different in the East. But is this indeed true? We're in India and Haridwar. In this city on the banks of the Ganges, the Kumbh Mela ceremony is being held this year. The biggest religious gathering in the world. 70 million pilgrims converge. The most important event of the pilgrimage is the immersion into the river, which symbolizes the washing away of their past lives. These monks have a rigorous practice. Their goal is to reach a state of enlightenment. Also referred to as an awakening or a liberation. But regardless of the term, only a few reach this state. We're in the midst of another enigma of the brain, altered states of consciousness. The study of these altered states of consciousness is difficult to do without a minimum of practice. Christine Lesconf chose Aikido. She's a psychologist at the Paris 11 University and published a very well-researched study on altered states of consciousness.
Altered consciousness is another way of being in the world, of understanding reality, your body, in time and in space. There are different states that go from extreme excitement, like in the positive trance, where the body and the mind are completely agitated, to states of ecstasy, where we try to make these states of consciousness disappear through the complete immobility of the body. It's an astonishing state of extreme peace and tranquility. It's a state that's very difficult to attain. We feel it sometimes, and then it escapes. And the goal is to retain it for as long as possible.
Now we're going to try to discover what can go on inside the mind of a yogi or of a person in the midst of mystical enlightenment. This young devotee from Haridwar is very clearly aware of it.
Your meditation begins from closing the external and getting to the internal presence. The awareness of the total awareness of the body is lost, it dissolves. So like you took the temple as a tool, but this temple is no more now. So you are only in this vibration, this energy, the presence, you feel, and this presence is of peace, harmony, love, compassion, totality, and just like a sky, infiniteness is there. You are not different from others. Then you don't become like he is this or that. So you become one with all.
This is what is astonishing. When we put the two images next to each other, we realize that we're very close to Jill Bolt Taylor's description of her state after her cerebral hemorrhage. Are the same regions of the brain concerned?
So we have to close, we have to close our left body. And I have closed my left body and put it as a close, as a lock. Locking my left part means locking all my movements into the world externally. And that brings my, inner peace. So I move with completely closing and grounding myself from the left and getting myself to the, to the right brain. And that brings peace. So then you close completely the left and let the right to be completely open, and then the flow is happening.
It's clear that the neurologist and the young yogi are describing more or less the same phenomenon, except that the yogi is looking to reach a new state of consciousness, whereas Jill Bolt Taylor experienced it after an accident. Here is a new question. If these altered states of consciousness can be described by those who are living them, then can they be observed by science? The answer is in these images. In 1995, Dr. Andrew Newberg from the University of Pennsylvania was the first to have the idea of scanning the brains of Buddhist monks meditating and of Catholic nuns praying. What he discovered goes way beyond religious experience.
We have found a lot of different changes that go on in the brain when people are engaged in a spiritual practice like meditation or prayer. And among those changes, one very important change occurs in the frontal lobes, right behind the forehead. This area becomes very active during meditative and prayer states because the person is intensely focused on their particular spiritual object or their spiritual goal. The other part of the brain that is also very involved is located towards the back top part of the brain called the parietal lobe. This part of the brain is our orientation area. It helps us to connect ourselves to the world, to orient ourselves in the world, and it makes a lot of sense that when people engage in a deep spiritual practice like meditation or prayer, that this part of the brain should be affected because they have this tremendous feeling of oneness, deep connectedness with God, ultimate reality, or whatever their spiritual goal happens to be.
In other words, the experience of meditation puts functions that belong more to the left side of the brain to sleep, functions that concern distinction, positioning, or orientation. And it facilitates a state that belongs more to the right side of the brain, a state of unity and fusion with the universe. The practice of Aikido allows Christine Lesconf to show very concretely that the search for certain mental states has an effect on our physical aptitudes.
The way we think, the way we direct our attention is reflected in our posture, in our actions. We can see it easily when we do Ki-Aikido exercises like those I'm about to show you. If I'm scared, if two dangerous people attack me and try to lift me up, for example, when I try to defend myself, I'm very vulnerable. They can lift me easily. Now I change my state of mind. I concentrate differently. I modify my consciousness. I'm concentrated on the center of my body. I'm relaxed and I'm totally anchored into the ground. No one can lift me up. So they're now going to try and lift me up. It becomes very difficult and even dangerous for them. Here's another example. I have 6 people in front of me, and I want to push them. So I do it hard, I push hard. I can push the first one, but the others don't move. So now I'm going to change my state of mind and the way I carry my intention, my consciousness. I let myself go completely, and I think about the last person, Adam, who's at the end of the line. Here I go. I'm totally relaxed, but I'm thinking all the way until the end. All the way until the last one, and it's him that I'm pushing. All the way calmly. This is another example. They're trying to knock me down. I'm resisting physically against them, and they manage to knock me down. Now, I'm going to act differently. I'm going to concentrate differently, so that they're going to push each other. I completely relax. I'm stretching until I decide to get rid of them.
If Aikido shows how a mental state can act upon the physical, then we can also show how mental states can reinforce certain moral values by studying with an MRI the cerebral activity of yogis during a state of compassion. Antoine Lutz discovered that the neural circuits of people who are well trained in compassion had transformed.
So what we found that the insular cortex was more activated for expert practitioners than novices, while they were listening to emotional sounds like the voice of a distressed woman. And this finding is important because the insular cortex play a critical role in feelings, and it also plays a role in empathy, which is a capacity that you have to feel the emotion of others.
Remember that during the state of meditation, the subject puts to sleep the functions that separate him from the world, to the advantage of functions like relations, sense of connectedness, empathy. At this point, we discover that virtues like compassion, charity, altruism can be learned and developed, just like learning a musical instrument.
So the general message here is that experience can can change the brain, and we already knew that's the concept of neuroplasticity. But what is new in this research is that the training of specific quality like that gas compassion or concentration or mindfulness could produce also a change in the brain and behavior.
These studies lead us to an important change in our point of view. If our most fundamental values and even mystical feeling have a cerebral translation, then we can dream along with Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor about the hopeful future of human development.
The person who has control of both of their hemispheres has their own freedom. They have true personal freedom to choose moment by moment who and how they want to be in the world. And there are times when it's appropriate for me to come into the world as a compassionate, loving, open, curious person, ready to celebrate life with you, ready to create with you. And then there's also skills of the left brain that I want to use. My ability to create language, my ability to categorize and organize and get things done. At the same time, I think that the future person will come from the consciousness of the right hemisphere. They will begin with the intention of I am open, I am free, I am whole, so are you, you're the life force power of the universe, what can we create together? So I think that there will be more cooperation, more celebration, more basic joy inside of us. I think our stressful circuitry will go way down, and I think humanity will be healthier.
In India, we traveled further to the north, all the way to Dharamsala. It's in this city in the mountains that most Tibetan refugees live. Despite our efforts and despite his willingness, we unfortunately did not manage to meet the Dalai Lama. We interviewed one of his close collaborators, the Geshe Lama. He confirmed the great interest that the Dalai Lama has for scientific knowledge about the mind.
About 3 decades, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been having dialogue with the leading scientists in the world, and they have been, contributing a lot to each other. And particularly, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has contributed immensely in the field of science by, exposing them the rich Buddhist, scientific approach.
So, maybe evolution will be found at the crossroads between modern exploration of the brain and Eastern traditions.
Buddha himself has emphasized a lot on the nature of mind and how it can be developed and improved and developed to an unlimited extent.
The Geshe Lama has summarized this possible evolution in these words: humanity is still in the mind's infancy. We asked our guests to comment about this observation using their words.
We are in the infancy of the brain, and it is a tremendous frontier. I think the frontier lies in trying to explore the right hemisphere that we've largely ignored, and now I think we've come in to realize it is a tremendous opportunity for us to look at it in depth.
I would say that we are young. I would not say that we are infantile, because I think we were more in an infancy before we really developed the skills of the left hemisphere. We had to develop the skills of the left hemisphere in order to become what we will become, evolve into. We're on the way to balance, I believe, of the 2 hemispheres. So we have now really developed the left skills. It's now to recognize and honor the skills of the right hemisphere so that the 2 hemispheres become balanced. And at that point, then we will be whole-brained individuals functioning from both hemispheres. And then we will reach our level of in my opinion, evolution.
But part of what I think is so important is that we integrate both what we can learn from science by looking at the brain itself and what we can understand from the spiritual, subjective experiences that people have, and to find a way to integrate them together. Some people call this the field of neurotheology because it's a way of linking science and religion. But I think that this is absolutely essential for us to understand all the different ways in which our mind works and how it can help us to better understand who we are as human beings and how we deal with the universe around us.
To conclude, let's go back to France. This is Neurospin, located on the Saclay Plateau. It was created by the Atomic Energies Commission. To date, it's the most powerful center of neuroimaging in the world and has gigantic magnets. By exploring the most secret regions of our brain that are still hidden in the shadows today, can tomorrow's science reveal one of its hidden sides? Will it help humanity make a giant leap forward? Why not? Although it's true that we are in the mind's infancy, it's without a doubt that science can and will help us grow up.